All right, quick show today. Today is January 2nd, 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. We are covering a few different topics today. First, we're talking about Mamdani, the first ever socialist, which really means Marxist, communist, mayor of a major city, the largest city in the United States, New York City, and his inaugural speech talking about collectivism over individualism. This is a very important comparison, a very important issue that is being discussed oftentimes in academia and among those that want to break down the American values, and Mamdani certainly fits into this. Secondly, we're going to be covering a news story from BYU, a paper that was put out talking about religious retention within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as compared to other religions. I want to go over this a little bit. We've got some graphs I want to show you. Yes, Latter-day Saints are better at retention than about any other denomination out there, which is fabulous news, and it's not surprising. But I want to discuss this a little bit and to look at the nuances of who we're actually losing still. And even though we are retaining more, we are still following the trend of the rest of Christianity currently, which is not good. Yes, we're baptizing a lot around the world. I'm talking about the U.S. here as far as retention goes. We're baptizing a lot around the world. Even in the U.S., our baptisms are going up, but we are losing, especially Gen Z and Millennials, and especially women in those two demographics and in all age groups, right? We're losing women quite a bit. So I want to discuss that. And then third, we're going to go back to Nick Shirley again, who is completely defying the spiral of silence. A lot of these new members of the church, these young members of the church that are strong members of the church and have strong testimonies are defying the spiral of silence and are going out there leaning into their beliefs. And this is an amazing example. It is essentially, I believe, them calling out that the emperor has no clothes. Because in our niceness culture among Latter-day Saints, we sit there and we try to be polite and nice and never bring these things up because the world doesn't really want to hear them. And yet here we have some young examples of those that are leading into their beliefs and putting it out there. And thank goodness this is starting to break the ice somewhat in, of course, podcasts has been doing this for several years now, but those that are getting national attention are starting to lean into their beliefs and have no shame in bringing up the fact that they are Latter-day Saints and in the things that they believe in. And it is going fabulously well as they do this. All right, so those are our three topics for today, January 2nd, 2026. This episode is brought to you by Cardio Miracle. Go to the website, CwicMedia.com, scroll down to the bottom and watch the video that I did on this a few years back. I take this product 3 times a day. It has changed my labs. I want to be clear on this. This is not just, I really like it and it feels good and this is a good product for me to sell, right? I have completely converted to this product. I tried it out for 90 days before I would ever sponsor it. The labs all changed. My gout has completely changed because of this product does is it increases your body's production of nitric oxide. And the results are, to me, incredible. They have been incredible as far as my labs go and as far as my gout and my cardiovascular issues, which are many, right? I'm a heart patient. So this is a product I cannot get behind enough. I strongly recommend that if you've not tried it out, that you try it out. You have a 60-day money-back guarantee with Cardio Miracle. So check it out. Here we go. All right, well, here we go with Quick Show today. Zoran Mamdani. Let me just show you a little image here that I've got. There he is. He's got a D next to his name in the parentheses, which typically means Democrat. Now, technically, that is his affiliation as a member of the Democrat Party. But that could just as easily be an M for Marxist or a C for communist. Well, Greg, you're a radical and, what are you talking? No, I mean, this guy is as blatantly a socialist, communist, Marxist as anybody I've ever seen run even beyond a Bernie Sanders or an AOC. It's very obvious what his background is. This is who he is, and he won because of it, right? He won because of the fact that he is what he calls a Democrat Socialist. He's part of the organization called, I think it's DSA, Democrat Socialists of America, along with AOC and other Congress women that are a part of that organization that is now national and about 80,000 strong. It's not that big, but they've got some key members in it. He says he's going to run and rule, so to speak. He's going to govern as a democratic socialist, which means he's going to run as a Marxist. He's going to run New York as a Marxist mayor in that city. And he says these things over and over again. It's not that there's always going to be pushback from people on the left that are going to say, stop with what you're saying. This is rhetoric that is flammable rhetoric and it's not peacemaking or whatever. No, we're going to call it out for what it is. It is what it is, period. The fruit is what it is, right? He is a Marxist. He is he puts a flowery image of socialist Democrat as a democratic socialist, whatever he calls it. This is what he is, and this is how he's going to govern. And putting that name of a democratic socialist over the teeth of the wolf of Marxism is just a way to get yourself in the door with some people, to soften it up a little bit with a label. Labels are important, unfortunately, and we don't look deeper into things than sometimes just a label. And this is something that has helped him get elected. But really the juice behind this, let's be honest, the juice behind this is he simply ran as a Marxist and putting out Marxist policies. And people are very, very excited about this. What's really interesting is that you have, for example, the mainstream media they're all supporting him. They think this is great. They have a huge issue with someone like Trump and the way that he governs, but they don't have a problem checking the left, right, at all. They don't have a problem in supporting this guy. And I'm going to show you a couple clips here that are very surprising. One of the things, the Firestorm quote that came out of his inauguration yesterday was this idea of rugged individualism. All right, this is an academic term that has been put forward by professors and those that help formulate the concepts of DEI and the destruction of America. That's exactly what this is. And that, rugged individualism needs to be destroyed, and we need to be put into a collective as much as possible. This is what he has to say here. You see Bernie Sanders here, who was swearing him in, who says that Mamdani is not a radical. That's cute coming from him. AOC right there in the background as well. This is a Marxist party here, basically. But let's see what Mamdani has to say here.
We will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
Collectivism.
If our campaign demonstrated that the people of New York yearn for solidarity, then let this government foster it.
Okay, solidarity. This is another Marxist term that he's using here, used all the time, and he drops this in here all the time. He is going back to the well of common Marxist terms with a label of democratic socialist. That's just a way to try and bring Marxism into the country. It's going to be very interesting to see how he rules, right? It's going to be very interesting to see, and I say rule because it's going to be tyranny to some degree. That doesn't mean he's going to be successful at all, but this is how Marxism works. And the only way for him to accomplish what he wants to accomplish is to put in place policies, law, individuals into the city to make a radical change against constitutional principles. So working within that bubble of the Constitution, it will be interesting to see how he tries to get things done. Now, back to this idea of of rugged individualism and collectivism, right? So one of the ways that those of critical theory, right? So you've got critical race theory, intersectionality, DEI, all of these labels and philosophies that have come out of academia in the last 30, 40 years. They all push against rugged individualism. It's one of the things they do. They're going to go against being white. They're going to go against rugged individualism. They're going to go against the patriarchy. These are all terms that are basically the heteronormative, as they call it, system that they're trying to break down, critique, break down, and replace with something else that they basically don't know how to run. Rugged individualism is the idea of exactly what built up this nation. And I say rugged individualism, but really it's families. It's rugged families. The rigidity of rugged families is really what he's talking about. So I'm talking about pioneer families. This is the exact opposite of what we saw in the display and narration and presentation on the Washington Monument on New Year's Eve, which was going through the American spirit. He wants to break all of this down. The rugged individualism of going out and taming the land, the rugged individualism of creating farms, the rugged individualism of entrepreneurship and building industry, the rugged individualism of Christianity and of liberty, that all requires a rugged individualism and rugged families to be able to do that. And we owe what we have here in the United States not to socialism, not to Marxism, not to a collectivism of tyranny, because that's what this type of collectivism is, but to a rugged individualism building bridges, still retaining your liberty and building bridges to be able to be a different type of collective based on individualism and based on individual rights. So this whole idea of rugged individualism is we don't believe in individual rights unless those rights are going to break down the system. And that's what he's going for, right? The collectivism. Why is the collectivism so important to him? What kind of collectivism is he really talking about? Solidarity. What kind of solidarity is he really talking about? Go back and look at history and see what Marxists have done previously with solidarity and collectivism. It is fascinating that we are at this point in America in 2026 where the largest city in our country is now being run by a Marxist, by a communist. So how is he going to govern? How is he going to rule? Well, he says so right here.
I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist.
There you go. And that is true. He was elected as a democratic socialist.
I will not abandon my principles for fear of being deemed radical. As the great senator from Vermont once said, what's radical is a system which gives so much to so few and denies so many people the basic necessities of life.
Okay, again, you're talking about the greatest country in the world that has whose poor are some of the richest individuals compared to a lot of the other countries in the world. This is the richest country in the world. The poor in this country are the richest poor in the world because of capitalism, because of rugged individualism, because of industry, because of a spirit of growth and advancement, and quite frankly, because of a combination of democracy, and yes, democracy. I mean democracy, not just a constitutional republic, which is very important also, but because of democracy, that is representation of the people in government, right? That's what democracy means. And Christianity, right? When you have those two things, that you have to see that those two things combined together, they are natural partners. They always are. For Latter-day Saints, as we look at the Book of Mormon, you can see this, where they are consistently, right? Captain Moroni is out fighting for 5 things, defending his country for 5 things, right? That is his land, his liberty, his religion, his God, and his family. And they are looking for a representation of the people in government. Really is just a fascinating time to be alive in the United States. But of course, woke is dead, right? As people want to say, woke is dead. Whatever. That is so ridiculous. We get so many headlines and silos that we live in that have a strong Trumpism right now that is very anti-woke, and we think that, oh, the wokeness is dead, it's gone. No, it's not gone, right? It will adapt. It always does. A virus always adapts. It will adapt. It will come up with new language. It will come up with new labels, and it will be stronger than ever down the road. Here we have an example of this with the largest city in America electing a communist mayor. Now, I want to go over this little reporting here from CBS News New York and what they're going to cover here. These people are elated. They can hardly hold back. It is very concerning, right? Everybody in the mainstream media cares about the far right and wants to demonize the far right, and they should, right? In many cases, they should on the far right and the issues that come up there, but they will never check the far left. In fact, when it comes up, they're like, oh, wow, this is great. Well, we like this. We support this. We want this. This is CBS New York talking about Mamdani's inauguration here.
Marsha, I would like to get your perspective on how Zoran Mamdani's success or failure will really have repercussions nationally. You know, we saw Bernie Sanders there. We saw AOC there. Really, the party and the socialism aspect of the Democratic platform really depends on the success or the failure of this administration.
Listen to her answer.
Well, I mean, Bernie Sanders said it himself. I mentioned it earlier. Bernie Sanders said that Zoran Mamdani had inspired a nation.
Okay, I just want to bring this up. So they're actually talking about, and rightfully so, they're actually talking about whether or not he will be successful, and everybody's looking at this to see if he's going to be, and everybody is. Everybody's going to look at this as a laboratory for how socialism in a massive city is going to work in the United States in a constitutional republic, right? And how that's going to work. What are the conflicts going to be? When you try to run as a communist, when you're trying to run a government, a city government, as a communist government within the and I do say communist because he's going to move toward that. Everything's going to move toward that, right? That collectivism that he's talking about. Yeah, everybody has private property. Yes, everybody has representation and is going to vote still. So it's not like New York is communist, but he is. And he's going to do his best to wiggle his way through all of these issues to bring about policies that are Marxist, that are democratic socialist. And there's going to be some conflict there. And how is he going to do this? And he'll be able to do whatever he can do with executive orders or whatever a mayor's powers are. I would imagine that he's going to push a radical change, despite what Bernie Sanders says. But there's no pushback on this. There's no pushback here from CBS on, yeah, wow, this is very concerning that a guy with communist mentality, with Marxist policies, is running the largest city in the country. That's where we're at in 2026. Last thing I want to bring up that I think is also interesting, I want your feedback on this, but you know, when he was sworn in on 2 Qurans, not 2 Bibles or not a Bible. And I'm not saying that he has to be sworn in on a Bible, but I mean, how do you ask someone who is a Muslim to put his hand and swear an oath on a Bible? But man, is it symbolic? It really is. I mean, you have a Marxist, and this is something that you've got to understand, right? The Marxists in this country, in the United States, and Islam have a very strong bond together. A very strong bond. They are 2 very, very strong collective movements. And this is why you see the movement on campuses with Free Palestine, right? And they're all with the far left professors and administrators and students. Black Lives Matter. The year after they were formed in 2014, in 2015, they're in Palestine with Palestinian leaders, Hamas and others. In 2015, what are they doing all the way out in Palestine? Why are they making allegiances and partnerships with the Palestinian authorities, such as Hamas, in 2015, after when they're really focused on or should be focused on, or say that they're focused on these issues of Black Lives Matter in the United States. It's because there's a natural link there. They both have a desire to bring down the fundamental structure of the United States, the founding principles, and they are both against Christianity. Now, I've got a lot of Muslim friends. I love them. I support them. They're really good people, right? But the movement itself, especially of Islamism, is a movement against the West. It is against the founding principles of America, and it is against Christianity, period. Anyway, this whole thing is fascinating. It's going to be quite a spectacle as we watch this over the next several years to see how he maneuvers a rigid, as best he can do, a rigid democratic socialist agenda within a constitutional government. Woke is not dead. All right, our next story is back to Nick Shirley. Okay, this is better than anything he's done in the past already on Minnesota or anything else. He's on the PBD podcast, a very large podcast, and he unashamedly comes out as a Latter-day Saint and talks about why this is so important for him. And this is so important because we have been stifling ourselves as Latter-day Saints for too long in this niceness culture that says, well, we don't want to disrupt anything. We just want to fit in. And it's, I don't know what the word is. Is it ridiculous? Is it preposterous? It's concerning. I can tell you that. Outside of a handful of podcasters over the last number of years, you don't get this. You don't hear this. And so it is so refreshing to see young individuals coming off of their missions and coming out and just being themselves and saying why this is so important to them. He is going to own it. He's not going to worry about, is this going to hurt my views? He's not going to come out and say, well, I'm just trying to be generally he's conservative, obviously. He's saying, no, I am a Latter-day Saint, and this is why this is important. He is defying the spiral of silence that so many members of the church fall into. And we've got to stop. Look at what he has to say here.
Someone's calling me like a PDF. They're saying all these crazy allegations. I'm like, hey, what sucks for them is they're never going to be able to get me. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do drugs. I'm a virgin. I don't have sex with random girls. You're not going to catch me on no sex allegation charges. I don't have any addictions. I don't have any vices. So what are these people going to get me for? They're done. I'm religious. I believe in God. I'm everything they hate.
I love that.
And so what are they going to get me for? They can't get me for anything. Someone's calling me.
Okay, so again, this is an important thing to understand. It's like, look, they're gonna, he's brought up all these fraud charges or these allegations in Minnesota, and he's like, people are coming after me now. They're trying to break down his character. Of course, it's all ad hominem. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and so they're going with ad hominem attacks here. And she's like, well, where are they going to get me? And he unabashedly talks about being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in this interview, and he talks about his principles and his values. He's willing to say, I'm a virgin at 23 years old. Good for him. Kudos to him. This is what we need more of out there, and hopefully this younger generation, even though there's a number of them that are falling away from the church, there are some of these individuals here in this generation that are just awesome. They are rock solid. And they are voices that can help save the rest of the church and our culture of a spiral of silence and of niceness culture and of teddy bear Jesus. Right? So love hearing this and love seeing him just cut right through everything and saying, here I am, world. This is me. And be vulnerable in that sense, but really strengthened, right? Really through a strength of testimony and conviction in who he is and what he does. He's an example. All right, lastly, I want to go over an article in the Deseret News that came out, it was a couple of weeks ago. But this is important data, and it's a follow-up on what I was talking about a couple of days ago on the Cwic Show today about the separation of what we might call the God gap, right? Where you have religion between men and women. We went over that graph between men and women and the differences in who is religious and who is not religious. And it's a very startling graph and study that we find there. And what it's showing more and more, unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, it's really too bad, but you're seeing more and more the conservative and Republican side being more and more separated from the left and the Democrat Party, who are now becoming more and more secular. They are less and less and less religious. And this God gap, which to me is a God/family gap, that's the key. We need to keep that in there. It's not just religion. Religion and family, you got to put those two together. And that gap is widening. And what we're going to see more and more is policies, law, representatives in government that are going to be representing religion and family, or just individuals who now need a collective, like Mamdani, right? Because they're not pushing for the family as much. And but you're going to see those that are not pushing for family and that are not pushing for religion and freedom of religion. And that gap is going to get larger and larger. And it's going to become a major battle, major battle. It already has, but it's going to increase going forward. So let's go over a few points in this study. Now, this study focuses primarily on the retention of the Latter-day Saint faith as compared to other religions and what's happening there, where there is a loss of religiosity, which is happening on both sides of the aisle, right? It's happening on both sides of the aisle, but much, much more on the left-wing side of the aisle. But Latter-day Saints have held up quite a bit in this. They are still following the trend of the United States becoming a more secularized society, becoming less religious, but they're holding on better than pretty much any other denomination out there. Let's take a look at this. The article opens up, it says, amid the dramatic shift in religiousness in the United States, BYU researchers have worked to pull together available data on Latter-day Saints, examining their religiousness, well-being, and retention. This comes at a time of growth for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But again, I wish they're trying to be too nice with this, right? Growth of the church worldwide. You have to look at it that way, right? It is in the United States, but it's not the same growth. They're going to be talking about other issues here, but this comes at a time of growth for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as well as high levels of engagement in the church educational system, right? So seminary and institute and BYU and all the other schools, it has been a very, very positive as compared to other denominations. Now, a team of BYU researchers has pulled together data. This comes from very important data sources. This is not just their own study, right? That they're pulling. They're pulling the data from the General Social Survey from 1977 to 2022. The 2024, that's the most recent Pew Religious Landscape Study. They do that every 10 years. And the Cooperative Election Survey, 2025, Latter-day Saint Religious Seismology Survey as well, and one regional data set of parents and youth, the Family Foundations of Youth Development Study from 2016 to 2024. So these are highly credible, often used and referenced studies that have been put together here and that they are drawing from. And they put together this paper about things. Now, let's just cover a few of the points here that they look at. First, surprising faith resilience amid a national decline. In the U.S., see, this is what I don't like about how they open this up. They talk about, first of all, the church's growth in numbers, which is still true in the U.S., but it's not the same. But then they don't say, but we're really just going to talk about the national decline here in the United States, right? You've got to be consistent all the way around. You don't need to try and be biased with this. Point two, and I'm going to go directly to this paper, to the study that they put together to cover these. But point two, they're the least likely to lose millennial and Gen Z members. Now, again, that is a misleading title. That means that they lose fewer Millennial, and Gen Z members than the others do. So when it says least likely, that's not what it means. It means, yeah, we're losing them. We are really losing them, right? But we are losing fewer than other Christian denominations and many other, Muslim, Jewish, etc. Religions. I do want to read this paragraph that goes along with this. It says, as some have noted, it's true that Latter-day Saint retention has decreased over time in line with national trends. See, that's what you've got. That's why this is misleading. What was 82% retention in the 80s? You need to think about why we had an 82% retention in the 80s. It dropped to 58% in the 2000s. 58% in the 2000s. So you dropped 24% retention rate, right, 20 years later. And then to around 50% in the years since. And then you drop another 8%. So you've gone from the 80s at 82% down 32% in retention. So we highlight all these great numbers, and we should, right? We're having the greatest explosion of baptisms worldwide right now. And that's amazing and fantastic. But we are losing members, existing members. And so you see a lot of apologists go out there and say, look how great everything is. It's like, no, not everything's great. Well, yes, are we excited about it? Are we supporting the church and excited about the growth in terms of baptisms? Absolutely. But there are problems. And quite frankly, they don't seem to be addressed properly. And maybe that's not the fault of the church. Maybe that's not the fault of and I say Salt Lake and then the church membership. Maybe it's the culture and there's nothing we can do to fight back against it. I don't know. But there are issues. And we don't need to put our head in the sand on those things because you're a parent. And to just have fluff thrown at you, the church is great, it's building up, and yet your friends are losing their kids. You've lost kids from the church. And that's not right. That's not right. You need to know and be aware of what's happening so that when you parent and you have discussions with your kids, you can address issues. And quite frankly, the church doesn't have the best record of not putting their head in the sand on some of these things and just trying to show positive information. Remember when they came out with the church essays? When they did, that some of that information should have been brought in a long time before that. I'm just trying to be real on this. Point 3 is diversity among those who step away. And the reason they're highlighting this is because this is different than many of the other denominations who are losing individuals in the church. Right? In other words, there is, contrary to narratives sometimes offered by critics of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, see, you don't have to always be in an apologist position. That's what I don't like about the way they do this, and especially the Deseret News. You don't always have to be in an apologist framing on this. But anyway, contrary to narratives sometimes offered by critics of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we found that the majority of those who de-identify still hold out residual levels of belief. Right, so they're not completely giving up on the church. Some of them not giving up completely on a belief in Jesus Christ. Right. 2 groups comprising 54% of the sample are faith keepers, and then there are faith leaners within that. And so they continue to feel religion is an important part of their lives and hold somewhat favorable views about Latter-day Saints. Okay, so there's a lot of those individuals, and we know them. They're still, it's like still kind of like these are my people, even though they don't identify still as a Latter-day Saint publicly with other individuals. What I don't like about this diversity, about what they're talking about and who's fallen away, is that they don't talk about the difference between men and women. And again, the reason is they're putting their head in the sand. They're putting their head in the sand on this. People won't talk about it because they're afraid to. And it's the fact is the diversity of those that are falling apart. You need to look at the women are falling away. The women are falling away from the church. More than the men, a lot more than the men. Now, this is not just a problem for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So when you have critics of the church that come in and say, see, it's the patriarchy within the church. It's the 15, right? The first presidency and the quorum of the 12 apostles. It's the oppressors. The church is oppressive. It's no. I mean, there might be a few people that feel that and get to that point, but really it's a cultural shift that's happening throughout the United States with women. It is feminism. It is critical theory. And people push back on me on that, and I will push back again on them. This is a major issue. And we don't address it properly. We do not address it properly. And that is both, I believe, from messaging and also from members of the church. And it's frustrating. I mean, looking down here on those that have put together this this study with BYU, and as an example here, so I pull this back up, right? Also contributing, one of them is Barbara Morgan Gardner. Okay, I was at a faith, a fair conference, and she knows very well through these studies, as she's put these together, that women are falling away. I don't know. She brought it up. I was glad she did. I've been trying to cover this for several years, trying to warn about it. It's a problem. And she brought it up in her talk at FAIR, that women are falling away from the church in greater numbers. But it's not written up here. Why don't they want to do it? Did Deseret News says we're not going to allow that in here? We don't want to bring that up. That's too touchy. This kind of attitude is frustrating. Now, maybe that's not what happened, but it's a pretty obvious issue here, and they won't talk about it. It's very frustrating. But I want to go to the paper here now that they have on this. And I'm not going to cover too much on this because, well, we're already going long for this show here. But I want to cover a few of the issues here. Religious practices. Now look at the different denominations here. At the very top is Latter-day Saint, right? This is those that at least monthly go to religious service, right? Latter-day Saints outdo everybody by quite a bit, by 11%, right? Now what you have here between the blue and the orange, one is the Generation X and one is millennial. These are the two different demographics here, millennials and then the younger generation, Gen X. So among millennials, you've got a 76% of those that go to church at least once a month. That is different from the numbers that I have. I will tell you that. So I don't know. That's very different from the numbers that I have, actually. And I understand that's only once a month, and that does not count as being active, by the way. That does not count as being active, but Gen X is about the same at 76%. Everywhere else, it's interesting because you get a further drop in Gen X, except among Muslims here. You get a further drop, and also Jewish is increased. That's interesting. But for the most part, you get a drop all the way across Christianity from millennials to Gen Z. Adult religious attendance. Again, here, this blue line at the top, that is Latter-day Saints, right? They have a higher retention rate in terms of attendance. This one here goes back to Generation Gen X and millennials. Millennials being the blue, Gen X the orange. Here you have the evangelical Protestants outdoing us on daily prayer. Right, so daily prayer, you've got 82% of millennials, 67% of Gen Z. They've dropped here 15% between the two generations. Latter-day Saints, 78% have daily prayer among millennials, and 70% for Gen X. Right, and then you come down to the others here, and you start getting lower and lower and lower numbers. So it's just monitoring your religiosity. Latter-day Saints do the very best at scripture study. That's not a surprise to me at all. I think that becomes a surprise to many evangelical Protestants, that we typically know the Bible better than the average evangelical does. And that is supported by data continually. But Latter-day Saints have 63% among millennials, have regular scripture study, and let's see if this is based off of at least weekly scripture study, and 56% of Gen X. And most of the numbers go along the lines of what you had with daily prayer there as well. Here's one of the most important ones. Parents praying or reading scriptures with their children. Latter-day Saints outdo everybody. And this goes along with the critics of the church. This is the last point I'm going to make, and that's the well-being based on spiritual peace and well-being. At least once a week you're feeling this from your religion. This is a higher number than it is for secular individuals by far, right? I mean, with those with no religion feel this 21% of the time, once a week. Okay, evangelical Protestants all the way up at 66%, Latter-day Saints shortly behind it, 64%. So, usually with critics of the church, they try to build this narrative that everyone's oppressed and feel bad. And no, they have a sense of well-being higher than just about anybody else in the country. That's being Latter-day Saints, and that includes Latter-day Saint women. Anyway, just wanted to put that out there. The church, just so you see some hard data on this, the church is losing millennials and Gen X. Just remember they are. So if you have parents of those millennials, and now especially the Gen Xers, and now coming up the Alpha generation, Gen Alpha, Gen A, you've got, don't put your head in the sand. Understand that there are issues out there, and we're losing a number of those individuals. And we're losing women. So if you are a parent of girls, just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. It's frustrating because the messaging from the church is primarily female. I have tracked this. You can track it going through the home pages of, for example, LDS.org or therestoredgospel.org, right? And it's primarily to women. And we've got the women's conferences. And yet all of this messaging and everything we're doing here doesn't work. It's not working. And you have to ask yourself why. And yet on the other side, with men, we're getting nothing. There are very few messages to men, very, very few that are specifically to men. There's no general priesthood anymore. There are no men's conferences. There's no sports anymore. There's no scouts anymore. There's no more young men's presidencies in the church at the ward level. There's no more young men's presidencies at the stake level. So something is askew there. Something's not right. And the solution for bringing women back to the church is not careerism. This is the problem that you get from an academic narrative here. And academia provides so many good things and so much good data, but this narrative is not true, right? The solution to women coming back to the church is not to focus more on, hey, look, we're not fuddy-duddies, and we believe that women should be high-level careerists in their lives. That's not the solution. If women choose that, great. Let them go with it. If they're high-capacity women and they can go and run with that, let them go run with that. Support them in doing that. But as a general message to the church, that is not right. It's not right. Because you're following a trend within the United States and in the West that says, don't have kids early. Don't get married early. Make sure you get as far in your career as you can and focus on that first. And that's the message you're going to get from academia, including at BYU. Motherhood is put on the back burner, or it's the message of you can have it all. And I know this is the message oftentimes at these women's conferences. And then you wonder, why isn't the messaging working for women? Anyway, the church is true. The church is true. I know people don't like to say that, but the church is true. It is the true church with the true authority. The gospel is true. And we live in a very interesting, fascinating, tumultuous time. Talk to you next time.